Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. And I'd like to start with the argument or the reflection that health metrics, that is, this quantification of diseases, risk factors, attributes of health systems, are particularly important as we face a series of old and new challenges in health. So there's clearly a long list of health problems that everybody in this room will be familiar with that reflect, in some sense, the ongoing agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals and the MDGs before them. Issues like high and sustained child mortality, maternal mortality, the major infectious diseases, but also issues of inequality, disparities that we see in any study that looks by socioeconomic status or ethnicity or locality. But on top of those existing problems, we've just been through a pandemic, and we have the prospect of future pandemics, and we have the prospect of many other emerging health events that could alter the trajectory of the future. Things like malicious use of AI or artificial general intelligence, antimicrobial resistance, and on of the set of events that can influence health as we move forward, as well as long-standing problems such as diabetes and obesity that are getting progressively worse, or the rise of addiction in many countries, not all, but certainly countries where we're seeing higher rates of addiction and their health effects, and of course, the potential and very likely impacts of climate change. So we face many health problems. And in that setting, I think it's particularly important to have the best possible measurements of health and health systems, and to put those two together so that we can identify whether resources, whether they be fiscal, financial, or human, are being allocated to the most important problems by geography or by group, and or where we're seeing that the increase of resources is actually making a difference. So it's the juxtaposition of metrics on both the inputs and the impacts of health systems. That sort of analysis is possible. Mexico is one of the first countries in the world that did state-level burden of disease, and that's now being followed on in the United States, the first admin 2 level, which would be municipio here in Mexico, but in the US we're now funded by the National Institutes of Health. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation is undertaking burden of disease for 3,000 counties, and also broken down by race and ethnicity. And at the same time, the Peterson Foundation in the US and Gates Ventures are funding the matching study on where health expenditure goes. So at the end of this process, we will end up with the analysis for 15,000 groups, county, race, ethnicity, of both outcome as well as money. And I think that opens up a whole new avenue around health metrics, looking at whether resources are aligned with need, where we see the impact of resources over time. Now, our model up until now on running the GBD, or being the coordinating center for the global burden of disease work, and other global public goods like forecasting and measurement of health expenditure, has been to create a large network of collaborators that work as part of this effort and are co-investigators, but working as individuals. And that effort for the global burden of disease has led now to almost 10,000 collaborators. We will hit the 10,000 mark, I think, in August on current trajectory. And that's been incredibly successful in the sense of now the GBD collaboration and just the GBD generally is producing some 500 peer-reviewed papers a year, which is really quite an extraordinary number. And it is, many of those, not all, are in top-tier scientific journals. So a very successful individual collaboration, but we have recognized that if the purpose of health metrics and the GBD more broadly is to change policy for the better, the only way that that happens is not only with individuals in each country actively part of producing those results, but we also need deep institutional strength in health metrics that can help co-produce the results. And so our 10-year vision for IHME is to spend a lot of time developing and partnering with institutions so that in parallel with the growing individual collaboration of individual academics, we see these institutional partnerships emerge where there's a critical mass of health metrics capabilities. We see our role in this as helping provide the training and skills and tools that can be run locally so that we can move to a model of co-production, decentralization of the work on the burden of disease, on forecasting, and also on measuring health expenditure and where it goes. So we're very, very excited that maybe the sort of first network at the regional level is starting here, led by Rafael Lozano from UNAM, as today's his last day as part of IHME, and tomorrow he becomes fully at UNAM. But we see this, we hope, spreading to a number of institutions in Mexico and in the region, forming a network where that more institution-focused effort at strengthening health metrics analytic capability emerges. Now, as part of that work, we have tried to map out what are the capabilities in health metrics that are really necessary, not for an individual, but for an institution or a group doing research in health metrics. What are those capabilities that are needed? And then to develop both the analytic tools and the training materials that can help with strengthening those capabilities. And that's a new direction for us. We've mapped out more than 100 capabilities that we think are important for health metrics work, and will, over time, seek to try to build the training materials and software tools that others can use to execute on those. Now, one tool that anybody who's worked on burden of disease in the past will be familiar with is called DISMOD-MR right now. It's a tool that we use to model simultaneously data on incidence, prevalence, excess mortality, cause-specific mortality, to create statistical Bayesian models for each disease by location and allowing borrowing a strength of those parameters. And we've now been working over many years to make a version of that, which is better, and we've now demonstrated that in simulation studies, but can also be run on any machine, as opposed to our high-performance computational cluster. And it's that sort of new tool that we think will catalyze much more of this co-production and decentralization of the analytic work. We have success models where we've done this in certain areas, for example, the University of Queensland, that leads all of the work on the burden of disease on mental health on the global scale. Certainly this model can happen, and we expect it will happen here in the region as part of this work through the network that's being formulated. There are many challenges ahead to that vision, but I'm very excited to be here at the launching in Mexico of this network, because I think it is the future. It is the future of how we will see health metrics done. It's the future of how we'll have higher quality science on health metrics, increased local ownership, and ultimately increased local use and impact on people's health, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. So thank you for letting me make these comments, and I look forward to the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Ah, lo vimos, sí. Sí, en la segunda parte. Allá sí hubo gente.